Hello, and thank you all so much for joining me today. My name is Travis Fenn, and this is the inaugural episode of Beneath the Shadows. I appreciate you being here and checking out the show. I'm coming at your ear holes today from my office studio in Ypsilanti, Michigan. It's a beautiful day outside. It's sunny, it's gorgeous, there's dogs barking, there's clouds, there's birds. It's fucking beautiful out. It's nice, it's 70, it's sunny and gorgeous, telling you what. Alright, so today, for this inaugural episode, we are going to be going to Green Bay, Wisconsin. Green Bay, a city known for football and cheese, is located on Green Bay, surprising enough, a branch of Lake Michigan that is on the west side of the lake. Where are my notes for this? Here we go. City in Wisconsin, it's at the southern end of Green Bay, an arm of Lake Michigan. Lambeau Field is the home of the Green Bay Packers football team, and the city has a population of 106,095 people as of 2022, and sits at an elevation of 581 feet. But none of that really has anything to do with today's story, other than it being on Lake Michigan, because I guess this paper mill in today's story was very close to the lake, but honestly that doesn't tie into the story. It's just a matter of location more than anything. But let's dive right into this story here today. It's going to be kind of a crazy one, kind of a wild one. It's a little murder mystery from the 90s, the 1990s, going back to 1992, a good 32 years ago. It was before I was born, having a birthday in 1996 in January. This whole scenario, this whole situation took place about 3.5 years before I was born into this world. So we will go to Green Bay, Wisconsin today, and we will meet first our protagonist of our story here, our main character. His name is Tom Monfils, or Monfils. I think it's one or the other. It sounds very French to me, but who knows exactly. I did not actually look into his background or his lineage, so I'm not sure if it's French, but it sounds pretty French to me. Mademoiselle and shit like that. Today we will head to Green Bay, Wisconsin, where the mysterious death of Tom Monfils in 1992 left family, friends, and law enforcement baffled as to what could have happened to lead Tom, a devoted husband and a loving father, to disappear. A short search would reveal a horror scene at the place of Tom's employment, the James River paper mill. In the following years, baffling law enforcement incompetence, a lack of physical evidence, and a slew of allegations would lead to the arrests and convictions of 6 men. Today we will discuss the life and death of Tom Monfils and the subsequent downfall of the Monfils Six. Thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Travis Fenn, and this is Beneath the Shadows. Also, I was thinking, just random sidebar, I guess. Everyone has a name for their studio, and, I don't really have a studio yet, but I have this little office studio that I'm going to be recording out of. And with the show being called Beneath the Shadows, I think it's appropriate for the studio to be named The Shadow Realm, but I'd like suggestions too. Some good suggestions would be awesome. So if anyone has any out there, I like The Shadow Realm, but if there's better ones, I'd like to hear them also. So throw those my way as well. Let's dive into this timeline, and we will get going here. So less than a week before Thanksgiving in 1992, the shocking call came in that a James River paper mill employee was missing and seemingly had disappeared into thin air while at work. On November 21st, 1992, around 2 p.m., the Green Bay police received word that Thomas J. Monfils had gone missing at work. The married father of two was born in April of 1957 and at 35 years old had mysteriously vanished while working at the paper mill. What could have possibly happened, and where could Tom be? Tom was a loving father to a daughter, Teresa, and a son, John Thomas, and devoted husband to his wife, Susan Monfils. The morning of November 21st, 1922? Yeah, that's fucking 70 years before this story even. Over 100 years ago, let's go. The morning of November 21st, 1992, there we go, Tom headed to the James River paper mill, just as he did for almost 10 years now. Arriving to work, Tom was nervous, scared even due to conflicts with fellow employees. Less than 2 weeks prior, Tom had contacted the local police to make a report. Remaining anonymous, as he did in all of his calls to police, Tom alleged that a coworker, Keith Kutska, I think it's Kutska, but it's Kutska, was going to steal electrical wiring from their workplace. Police then phoned security at the mill. Security proceeded to Security proceeded to request a search of Kutska's belongings at the end of the workday, and when Keith refused to have his belongings searched, he received a 5-day suspension from his job. Angered and now seething with rage, Keith wanted to find out who had ratted on him, to the police, to the security at the mill, just who had ratted on him in general. He definitely knew the police had known because he does contact them. We'll get into that right now, pretty much. Following the initial report, Tom would phone the police an additional 4 times in efforts to assure that his allegations, which had been taped, would not be released to anyone, especially Kutska. In these calls, made on the 12th, 17th, 18th, and 20th of November, the day before his disappearance. Did I say the 21st? Yeah, I did, I guess. The day before his disappearance, Tom spoke with a variety of police officers, including the shift commander, Lieutenant Kenneth Latour, and Deputy Chief James Taylor. Most of them reassured him that the tape would either... What am I doing here? Most of them reassured that the tape would either wouldn't... I can't speak. Most of them reassured that the tape either wouldn't or couldn't be released and that he should not worry. There we go. Tom, still scared, portrayed his feeling as that he believed Keith Kutska would stop at nothing to hurt or even kill Tom if he found out that Tom was the individual who filed the police report to the police. During the same time, Keith Kutska had contacted the police on his own terms in order to arrange a way to obtain the recording of the call that was made to police. Kutska stated that he was trying to figure out who had reported him to James River Security because they had gotten him in trouble. Even after speaking with numerous police officers who assured him that the tape would not be released, Tom was skeptical, and had every right to be. Through vast negligence and separate miscommunications, the tape was released to Keith Kutska within 24 hours of Tom Monfils' disappearance. And once played, Keith knew who was on the other end of the recording, snitching to the police about his burglarious plans. I think it's burglarious. It's a very interesting word. Burglarious? I think it's burglarious. What the fuck am I talking about? Now, bouncing back to November 21st, 1920. Jesus Christ, it's 1922. Now, bouncing back to November 21st, 1992, Tom Monfils arrived for work that morning, and as he passed through security and made his way beyond the doors of the James River paper mill, he had no way of knowing these would be his last hours alive. By 8 a.m. that morning, some, if not many, may have noticed that Tom Monfils was not at his usual workstation. In fact, within 2 hours, the paper mill supervisor, Pat Ferraro, I don't know, it reminds me of the Rochers, Ferraro Rocher. I don't think it's the same word, but I would have to look that one up. Had called the Monfils household and spoken with Tom's daughter, Teresa. A short while after this, Pat also spoke with Tom's wife, Susan. Ferraro inquired as to whether or not Tom may have been at home, somehow slipping off the mill property without anyone noticing. Susan informed Ferraro that Tom had not come home and she did not know where he was. Ferraro then stated that Tom was missing and that they had checked the mills and the machines quite thoroughly while looking for him. Susan then drove to the mill to aid in finding her husband. After hours of searching without answers, Susan and Tom's father, Ed, went to the Green Bay Police to file a missing persons report. The paper mill coming up empty in their searches phoned the police as well to report the strange disappearance. With the Green Bay Police now involved, the search for Tom Monfils expanded through the paper mill. Room by room, section by section, the police reanalyzed the mill. The hours passed with no evidence of Tom's whereabouts, and by 9 p.m., the police were almost certain that they had checked almost the entirety of the entire mill property. Due to this, police would now seek the public's help and release information about Tom's disappearance to local news stations. There were only a few spots left for officers to check. The nearby riverbank, like I said, it's right on this little jut of the Green Bay that goes into Lake Michigan at the rear of the property, and a room within the mill that contained numerous vats full of tissue pulp for paper creation, which I didn't know, actually. Paper pulp is this raw material for creating paper, obviously, that contains vegetable, mineral, and man-made fibers, and they keep this pulp moist in these vats, and then you can spray this paper. They use these industrial-sized sprayers to spray this paper onto these sheets, and they make these sheets different thicknesses to create these different types of paper. I really had no idea about this. I didn't look into it too much, but it seems like a crazy way. I mean, obviously paper's coming from somewhere. Paper's huge fucking business in the world, but never knew how it was created, and I didn't realize that there was these giant pulp vats that were sitting in these factories where it is created. So back to our story today. The next day, November 22nd, police continued their search, scouring the nearby riverbanks. Searchers continued their desperate hunt for Tom Monfils. The painful lack of evidence took its toll on Tom's wife, Susan. She continuously tried to find out where her husband could be. She continuously tried to find out where her husband could be. Did he withdraw any of their money? Did he use any of the credit cards? Where had Tom gone? The exhaustive efforts of authorities. I have a terrible speaking voice. Everything fucking gets mushed together and everything is slurred and fucking it's awful. Tell you what, I need to work on my pronunciation, my enunciation, all of it. But thank you for see right there. Thank you for bearing with me. The exhaustive efforts of authorities, coworkers, and family went on throughout the day. A dismal reality was coming to light. After clearing the riverbanks, the police had one last-ditch effort, one last location to look, the room containing the giant pulp vats. Later that afternoon, the room was searched, revealing no one upon initial investigation. The search for Tom Monfils seemed endless, with no answers in sight. Nearing the end of the workday on the same afternoon, November 22nd, Greg Stevens, a supervisor at the paper mill, became painfully aware that problems with the tissue chest vat were occurring. Around 8 p.m., Stevens ordered that no more stock be sent to the chest because it was going to be shut down. This message was eventually relayed to Ralph Verheyen. The agitator at the bottom of the vat seemed to be functioning improperly, and even after being restarted, still continued sluggishly. Even with slow conditions, the chest kept pumping, since it was the main source of pulp for nearly the entire mill. Without this chest pumping stock, the rest of the mill would nearly cease all operations. Once the tissue chest had been completely shut down, the turbine agitator slowing to a halt, the last step was to empty the vat to reveal the agitator for inspection and maintenance. At this time, some of the employees believed the paper mill was not doing enough as a company to aid and help in locating Tom. One employee stated that she had a concern that lack of progress was made in the search. Little did she know that the search for Tom Monfils was not even going to last an hour longer. Ralph Verheyen and another employee, Kelly Drown, chatted together while the vat emptied. Once enough time had passed and the tissue pulp vat was nearing the bottom, the pair, along with an additional employee, walked to the area that overlooked the chest. I mean, these chests are huge. I think when I was looking at it, they have like a 14-foot diameter, and they're about 20 feet tall. They have these catwalks that hang over them that they go up to do inspection over and to make sure everything's going good or to add shit. I don't know exactly what they do up there, but to check on the vats. But these vats hold 20,000 gallons of pulp, this thick material that they spray to make these paper sheets. When they peered over the edge, they couldn't tell quite what they were looking at first. When they peered over the edge, they couldn't quite tell what they saw at first. How about that? They thought it might be a large piece of debris, but quickly realized what it truly was. Verheyen recalled, "It was swirling around with the stock. It rolled over and I saw his stomach. I then realized it was a body, obviously Monfils." The authorities were informed, and finally the mysterious disappearance of Tom Monfils had been solved. But now, many questions arose, and with Tom's body still in the vat, needing retrieval, numerous questions were still to come. Several attempts were made by police to raise Tom's body to the top of the vat using hooks and ropes, but none were successful. Following these attempts, authorities decided to use a small inspection port located near the bottom of the vat to remove the body. The port was comparable to the size of a manhole cover. Once the vat was drained to the levels below the port and accessible for firefighters, the body removal process began. As firefighters began to lift and maneuver Tom's body to be in position for going through the porthole, the 180-pound lifeless body seemed especially heavy. The easy culprit, a 50-pound iron weight that was knotted around Tom's neck with a rope. Now, out of the vat, the Green Bay coroner's report read as follows. The body appears to be that of a Caucasian male. It is in an advanced state of decomposition, as evidenced by odor, severe discoloration, bloating, skin slip, and some apparent purging in areas of laceration. The lower legs above the ankles are severed in an irregular manner. Both feet and lower legs are attendant, which actually I don't know what that means. I'll have to look that up. No rigor mortis is present. The pupils cannot be evaluated due to the condition of the body. Liver mortis, I don't even know what that one is either, cannot be determined. What, the temperature of the liver or whatever? I have no idea. Further description of injuries will await an autopsy, which will be ordered. The body is placed into the white disposal bag at 2:25 a.m. The body is removed from the immediate area to an adjacent room where it is placed into a heavy-duty pouch for transportation. The bagged body is placed on a stretcher belonging to Metro Ambulance. The scene is departed at 2:30. At this point, the police only had two suspected causes of death: suicide or foul play. Which I mean, I guess you gotta leave it up in the air, but you found dude with a fucking 50-pound weight tied around his neck. It's still up for discussion with a lot of people. I just don't see someone who wants to kill themselves tying a 50-pound weight around their neck and jumping in a pulp vat as being the way to do it. Maybe that's just me. Maybe there are people who, would do that and torture themselves that way, I guess. I don't know. It's very strange to me, but I think it looks like foul play to me. I'll take that stance on it. I really do think that he was murdered in some way or, beaten and thrown in there alive, as we will talk about. Something of that nature. But The autopsy, to be performed on the subsequent day, Monday, November 23rd, would reveal much more regarding this topic. The autopsy started around 12:30 p.m. And took nearly 4.5 hours to complete. The coroner Williams was quoted would quote the findings as being gross in nature, and continued with, in addition to the ligature previously noted, included multiple areas of trauma to the head, neck, chest, and abdomen, as well as a traumatic amputation of both legs below the knee. The death now looking more and more incidental, much more like murder. The police would have to dive hard into their investigation. The investigation started strong, with police interviewing fellow employees and exploring all details and leads surrounding the death of Tom. Very quickly, information would come to light surrounding an incident that occurred at the mill the morning of November 21st between Tom and 3 of his fellow employees. But police quickly ruled that this confrontation was not physical, yet a tense verbal exchange. They didn't believe anything like no punches, no shoving, nothing like that took place, just some fuck yous and some, get on my face type shit. Beyond this piece of information, the police had little to go on, but certainly they were still interested in the confrontation Tom had been involved in that morning. The co-workers involved in that confrontation were Keith Kutzka, as we talked about before, the man that Tom had accused of stealing some wire, Mike Piaskowski, sounds very Polish, maybe? Something of that nature. And Randy Lepek. Lepek? L-E-P-A-K. Lepek. With authorities focusing on these 3 men that had argued with Tom the morning of November 21st, they would soon realize that their own errors and miscommunications may have played an additional hand in the incident. Police, now aware of the tape that had been obtained by Kutzka, in which Tom blabs about his plans to steal electrical wiring, had much more interest in obtaining testimonies from employees, witnesses of the argument, and in talking with Keith himself. As the weeks passed, little information emerged surrounding the death of Tom Monfils. Small pieces of circumstantial evidence emerged, including testimonies of fellow employees. One employee in particular fell into the hands of the Green Bay police and provided a way for them to gain evidence against their now number 1 subject. This employee, Brian Kellner, went on to testify with damning details against Keith Kutzka. The testimony of Kellner, though, was not fully brought to police attention until late 1994, early 1995. Nearly 2 years into the investigation, the police still had a tremendous amount of work to do, and the totality of the investigation would go on to last 841 days, almost 2.5 years. On Wednesday, April 12, 1995, police convened on the James River paper mill, and not far behind followed a SWAT truck and team of agents. The systematic arrest of 8 employees from the mill was about to take place. A few officers had arrived ahead of the rest, and once the cavalry arrived, arrests went smoothly. 8 men in total: Keith Kutzka, Dale Baston, Michael Johnson, Michael Piaskowski, Ray Moore, Michael Hearn, Randy Lemick, and Marlon Charles were all taken into custody. 6 of the men were charged with a variety of crimes, mainly first-degree murder in the death of Tom Monfils. The other 2 men, Randy Lepek and... I messed up. It's Lepek. Lepek? It's not Lemek. I said Lemek. And Marlon Charles were charged with a lesser crime of injury to a business, harassment, and restraint of will. Within months of being arrested, all 6 men charged with first-degree murder would be found guilty of their crimes and sentenced to 25 years to life in prison, with conviction weighing heavily on the testimony of Brian Kellner, the guy I had mentioned earlier, one of the fellow employees. By November of 1995, the 6 men charged with the murder of Tom Monfils, the Monfils 6, would file appeals to the court. These initial appeals would go unnoticed, though, with all 6 men being denied their first time around. The next few years would be filled with speculation and rumors surrounding the death of Tom Monfils. Numerous people did not believe that the 6 men could have killed Tom, so questions were raised about police tactics and the thoroughness of the county's medical examiner. Was Tom's body and injuries examined to their fullest extent? Were the injuries ever compared to the possible weapons? In conjunction with these questions, more appeals were filed, continuously being denied. Furthermore, in the following years, Green Bay Police's main witness's testimony would come into question. Brian Kellner, his testimony would come into question time and time again. This testimony, that of Brian Kellner, as I have mentioned, went as follows. On July 4th of 1994, good old fucking Independence Day, holler, fucking America and stuff, shooting off fireworks and drinking, which is exactly what they're doing. Not fireworks, but they're drinking. Brian Kellner and his wife Verna were drinking at an area bar. Additionally, Keith Kutzka, who was also having drinks at this bar on the day, small town, the only fucking bar in the town, so everyone's there because it's the 4th of July and you want to get drunk. During this time, Brian and Keith, co-workers at the James River paper mill, ended up chatting at the bar. It was during this conversation, Kellner recalled that Kutzka would reenact the horrible beating of Tom Monfils. Actually did a whole reenactment for him. This reenactment included testimony that Kutzka, Hearn, and Moore were all present when the beating occurred. Furthermore, Kutzka implied that someone may have hit Monfils with a wrench or a board. Kutzka then claimed that he left the area and an unconscious Monfils near Machine 7. This attack occurred just after 7:30 a.m., and within the following minutes, another employee would share damning testimony entwining Michael Johnson and Dale Baston into this brutality. David Weiner, good old fucking Mr. Weiner himself, good old Dave Dick, Jesus Christ, would tell people that minutes after the apparent attack, he saw Johnson and Baston walking near Machine 7, 5 to 6 feet apart, towards a pulp vat carrying something. This something presumably refers to the body of Tom Monfils. This would lead to an interesting detail that the 50-pound weight found tied around Monfils' neck was regularly located near Machine 7. So this weight was this tied around his neck with this jump rope type rope, I guess. And I don't know exactly why the weight was there, but it's commonly kept next to these machines. And it varies in some of the reports. Some say 40, some say 50. It's a 40 or a 50 pound. I went with 50. I think I saw that a few more times, but either way. Appeals of the convicted continued to roll in year after year, being denied every time. This was until 2001 when Michael Piaskowski, after exhausting his direct appeals, petitioned for a writ of habeas corpus, and after Judge Myron L. Gordon granted that writ, the man convicted with the least amount of evidence against him would finally have his conviction reviewed. The review of his conviction by the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals would lead to Piaskowski being the only one out of all 6 members of the Monfils 6 to be exonerated of his crimes. Michael Piaskowski would be released after serving 6 years in prison for a crime he likely was not involved in. This exoneration would lead to further questions behind the death of Tom Monfils, and to the big question, was Tom murdered or did he commit suicide? Following the exoneration of Piaskowski, the possibility of freedom seemed much more likely, much closer for the remaining members of the Monfils 6. Appeals would continue to roll in year after year, and evidence being presented and presented again. But for the other 5 men, Keith Kutzka, Michael Hearn, Ray Moore, Dale Baston, and Michael Johnson, direct appeals would be a dead-end road. Parole would be their only savior at the end of the day. During the years following the arrest, the initial testimony of some witnesses would come under consideration due to new emerging details. Brian Kellner, who had testified that Keith Kutzka implicated 5 other men and himself in the beating and murder of Tom Monfils during a barroom reenactment, partially recanted his initial testimony not long after the convictions. At this post-conviction hearing, Kellner admitted that Keith only identified himself, Hearn, and Moore as being involved in the confrontation of Tom. This was a piece of evidence used by lawyers in the exoneration of Michael Piskowski. Around the same time, extra evidence would come from an unlikely source, a jailhouse informant named James Gillum. Gillum was serving time in prison and happened to be the cellmate of Ray Moore. Gillum would go on to tell police that Ray Moore expressed his involvement in the crime along with the involvement of a group of identified others that gathered before the confrontation of Monfils. Now, jumping forward to 2015, some incredibly interesting information comes to light during a parole hearing for Keith Kutzka. Information suggesting that the testimony of Brian Kellner, who passed away in 2014, may have been incorrect or completely false. After testifying in the 1995 case, Kellner apparently told multiple people that his confession was false and that he had been threatened with the loss of his kids and job by the lead detective in his case, Randy Winkler. Winkler strongly and vehemently denies these claims. Additionally, Keith Kutzka's ex-wife, who he was married to at the time of his arrest in 1995, claimed that Kellner's accusations that Keith performed some kind of reenactment at the bar was a made-up story. Even with this new, potentially damning evidence, the judge found insufficient reasoning to grant Kutzka's parole. By this time, the 5 men left in prison had gained a small but dedicated following who believed in their innocence. 2 of the men, Dennis Gullickson and John Guy, G-A-I-E, Guy or Gay, I'm not sure on that one, even wrote a book about the men's innocence called The Monfils Conspiracy, The Convictions of 6 Innocent Men, which really is a well-written book. They have a lot of information. I did take a lot of today's storyline out of this book, along with a lot of news articles I found on newspapers.com. So I would say that they did a good job. I don't know if I completely agree with them. Like I said, I do believe that he was murdered in some way. I don't think that he threw himself in there with a weight tied around his neck, but I'm not sure. I don't think anyone can truly be sure except for maybe these 6 men. It would take until 2017 for the first of the 5 remaining imprisoned men to be paroled. Dale Baston, in declining health, would be released in 2017 and would unfortunately die 9 months later in 2018. Following this, 3 of the 4 men still in prison would be released in the subsequent years. Michael Hearn would be paroled in 2018 after 23 years behind bars, with parole being granted for Michael Johnson and Ray Moore in 2019, within a day of each other, and this would leave the only one, the so-called ringleader, Keith Kutzka, to endure further time in prison. Parole would continue to be denied for Kutzka time and time again. In 2021, Keith would be denied parole. Then 2022, again, denied parole. But he was moved to a minimum security prison that year, which was a factor that would satisfy his risk reduction requirement for a successful parole, and that resulted in 2023, on August 10th, Keith Kutzka, at the age of 72, would be granted parole and walks out of prison less than 3 weeks later on August 30th, 2023. Under a year ago, as I'm recording, he has been released. He is out. He does a lot of appearances and things about wrongful convictions. He's done some speeches at schools, at colleges, things of that nature. So after his release, all 6 members of the Monfils 6 are now free, and with that, we are going to be kind of clearing out into our last segment, a segment I would like to call our main marks. So first off, number 1, On November 21st, 1992, Tom Monfils, a James River paper mill employee, mysteriously vanished while working on the job. Number 2, the following day, after issues with a pulp vat resulted in the tank being drained, Tom's body would be found floating in the vat. Number 3, the subsequent investigation would take 2.5 years, 841 days to be exact, and would result in the arrest and convictions of 6 men for conspiracy to murder Tom Monfils, resulting in his death. They were not actually charged with first-degree murder, but all were charged with conspiracy and received the same sentence as they would have, that 25 years to life. Number 4, one of the 6 men, Mike Piaskowski, would be exonerated of his crimes in 2001 after serving 6 years in prison. The other 5 would each serve over 20 years, with the first of the 5 finally being paroled in 2017, and that was Dale Baston. If you remember, he was having some health issues and ended up dying less than a year after his release. The last of the men paroled, the so-called ringleader Keith Kutzka, was released in 2023, just about a year ago today. And number 5, some different information, something I did not talk about today to keep the episode a touch bit shorter, not much, but just a tiny bit. In 1997, Tom's wife, Susan, would sue the city and police of Green Bay for a wrongful death lawsuit involving her husband's passing. This was surrounding the release of the tape to Kutzka, which should not have happened. She would end up winning this lawsuit and would be awarded $2.1 million in damages, a number that would later be reduced upon appeal. I think she ended up only getting like $200,000 or something of that nature, if I remember from the article, but still ended up winning that case. Not that that convicts these men or proves that they are guilty, but she did win this case, and there was some shitty law enforcement incompetence that happened during this case. So now, let's go to our final takeaways, our outro, and we'll get you out of here. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me today on this inaugural episode of Beneath the Shadows. My name is Travis Fenn. Please throw a good rating, a good review if you like the show. Tell me some tips, some comments. If you have any questions, let me know. Let me know what I can do better. I'm going to work on improving my audio, improving my terrible fucking slurry mushed together words that sometimes happen, and work on my pronunciation and enunciation. I hope that I can put together a good storyline for you guys every week. I'll be hopefully releasing an episode every week. Hopefully they'll be right around half an hour long, and they will be regarding a ton of different topics, a little bit of everything. It's just myself, though, so I'm going to be doing a lot of research and piecing these shows together. They won't always be perfect, but I do appreciate some solid feedback. I do appreciate the positivity, and thank you guys so much for joining me today. Coming at you live, not really live, coming at your earbuds today from the Shadow Realm. It sounds good. I think it's good. I don't know. What do you guys think? Different Shadow Realm? Good name for the studio office thing here. My name is Travis Fenn. This is Beneath the Shadows. Thank you so much for joining me. Check out social media soon. I'll have something up there. And, have a hell of a day. Thank you, and peace and blessings.
Wow.